posted May 21, 2018, 6 hours 34 minutes and 18 seconds. At the recent AMP annual general meeting, the company's interim chairman Mike Wilkins asked shareholders to judge directors on their actions. His plea to the 300 or so people at the meeting came during a lengthy apology for the scandals around AMP, which saw the chairman, chief executive and 2 other directors leave immediately, with a 5th director to go by the end of the year. Mr. Wilkins' exact words were, "It's critical that our actions speak for and define us in the coming months. On that score, he didn't make a good start." When asked to reveal the votes by big shareholders against directors, Holly Kramer and Vanessa Wallace, which prompted their immediate resignations, Mr. Wilkins refused. When asked to put that decision to a vote at the meeting, he again refused. When asked if he would show the proxy vote by big institutions on AMP's remuneration report to help inform discussion on the report, Mr. Wilkins refused, even though he knew it was a record 61% against. When asked to reveal how much new chairman David Murray would be paid, again the answer was no. Appeals from the floor for AMP to get on the front foot in improving transparency fell on deaf ears, despite the crisis which has engulfed the company. Mr. Murray was not at the AMP AGM, ostensibly because he will not officially become chairman until July 1, yet we learn Mr. Murray has been talking to AMP's big shareholders. Some shareholders more equal than others. AMP is one of Australia's most widely held companies. About 70% of it is owned by small, mum-and-dad shareholders, courtesy of its demutualization 2 decades ago. The annual general meeting is their only chance to hear from, and talk to, their company's directors. Mr. Murray chose to talk to a select few shareholders behind closed doors and ignore the platform the AGM would have given him to reach a much wider shareholder audience. To paraphrase George Orwell, all shareholders are equal, but some shareholders are more equal than others. So much for transparency. AMP would argue as Mr. Murray is not yet officially in the chairman's role, he had no place at the AGM. From the mood of the meeting when discussing Mr. Murray, a resolution to allow him to speak would have been passed with a huge majority. Judge us on our actions. This writer was repeatedly told by AMP's public relations team the AGM was all about shareholders. It's traditional at the end of the meeting that directors chat with shareholders over a sandwich and a cup of tea. What happened at AMP's AGM, with the prospect that they may be asked a few curly questions, the minute the meeting was over, Mike Wilkins and his fellow directors snuck out a back door. So much for the shareholders, and so much for judge us on our actions. AMP directors are paid an average of around $320,000 a year of shareholders' money. Clearly not enough to come face-to-face with the 1 or 2 of those shareholders, who may interrupt their tea and sandwiches to demand some answers for the value destruction the board have presided over. Fast forward a week to the Coca-Cola Amatil annual general meeting and it was the same story from Catherine Brenner, a director of CCA and the woman who resigned as chairman of AMP because of the scandals revealed at the Banking Royal Commission. AGM's just a compliance exercise. Brenner earned more than $1 million last year from her directorships of AMP, CCA and building products company Boral. But a 7-figure pay packet doesn't give shareholders the right to ask her any tough questions either. Ms. Brenner followed the example of her former AMP colleagues and snuck out of the CCA meeting as soon as it was over, complete with a bodyguard to keep pesky questioners away. ABC reporter Carrington Clark felt compelled to chase her down the street to try and get a question in. The Australian Shareholders Association says directors still view the annual general meeting as a compliance exercise. Something to be got through and nothing else. Directors talk a lot about serving and shareholder engagement, but what we've learned in the last week or so, if AMP and Catherine Brenner are any guide, is that it's only on their terms and only when the news is good. Those actions Mike Wilkins talked about speak a lot louder than words. Topics: Company news, Australia.